Baruchot habaot, ladies, and welcome to this amazing shiur. Thank you for gathering here today before Chanukah. It's so special of you. I just want to make a couple of announcements to you guys and to the viewers out there. Ladies, I am so happy and proud to finally announce that Ohel Sarah has now officially launched its exclusive site for women only. Log on to ohelsarah.com, www.ohelsarah.com. Log on and you're going to see their recipes for ladies, information on tefillot, all kinds of tefillot, information on Shabbat, date converters, information on the mitzvah of kisui rosh, shiurim. I am going to continue giving shiurim on Torah anytime, but the expansive shiurim, the deeper shiurim, the shiurim that you like are going to be actually made accessible to you on ohelsarah.com. So anyone who would like to experience more of a virtual kind of experience, a more entertaining kind of experience, please log on to ohelsarah.com. You could register. Registration is free. And then just log into the shiurim section over there, and it goes according to category, and you could watch the shiurim over there as well, and any other topic that is interesting to you. Ladies, this shiur is in dedication and memory of the Isha Chashuva, a friend of mine's mother-in-law, Sarah Rivka Bat Chizki Yeshraga Faival Alea Shalom, whose yahrzeit is on the first night of Chanukah. May all the words that we're learning in this coming shiur, all the chidushim, all the inspiration that you draw, may it be for her schut, that Be'ezrat Hashem she should go mala in the shamayim, although I don't know how much higher she can go, because this woman was a tremendous ba'alat chesed, ishat chesed, but every word should give a tremendous nachat. And may she be a melitzat yosher for us in the shamayim, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should bring tremendous light into our homes, into our hearts, should give us tremendous mazel and nisim. We should experience nisim. Again, you should have her in mind, this tzadikah, Isha Chashuva, Sarah Rivka Bat Chizki Yeshraga Faival Alea Shalom. Her yahrzeit is on the first night of Chanukah. Ladies, tonight we're celebrating the first night of Chanukah. And with it, we're beginning to learn this week's Parashat Miketz, which always coincides with Chanukah. So today, we're going to draw out the amazing lessons of the Parasha and take the lessons with us into this auspicious Chag. Now, I do have to say that this lesson is extremely deep, and it requires you to really stay focused. Very deep inyanim we're going to learn here today. There are many secrets in this week's parasha. The story in this parasha is actually a sequel of last week's parasha, where the brothers stripped Yosef HaTzadik alav shalom of his kotonet pasim. They threw him into a pit and eventually sold him to a pack of Ishmaelim for 20 silver coins and a pair of shoes. And after that, they dipped Yosef's coat in goat's blood, and they presented it to their father, hoping that their father would pretty much make his own assumptions. And of course, Yaakov assumed that Yosef was consumed by a wild animal, and as a result, he went into a spiritual depression that lasted for over 2 decades. We all know this sad story. Yosef is taken to Egypt, where he's sold into slavery and bought by Potiphar, who eventually makes him overseer of his entire estate. Then there's the episode of Potiphar's wife, who tried to seduce Yosef, but to no avail. She accuses him of violating her, and misken, he's sent to prison for 12 long years. after those years in prison, he's summoned by Paro to interpret his dreams, and he does such a good job that Paro makes him the viceroy of the entire land of Egypt, second in command only to Paro himself. So in this week's parasha, ladies, we find that there is a great famine in the land, and the brothers are forced to go down to Egypt in order to purchase some food. Yosef finds out that his brothers are in Egypt, and he arranges for them to be brought before him. The brothers have no clue that the great viceroy of Egypt is their long-lost brother who they sold into slavery. And we see in this parasha the interaction between Yosef and the Shevatim. Now, if we didn't know any better, we'd think that Yosef was taking vengeance on his brothers. I mean, think about it. His brothers come down to Egypt in order to acquire some food, and a simple acquisition turns into a nightmare where they're accused of being spies. So of course, the brothers deny the accusation, at which point Yosef lets them go, but not before he arranges for money to be put into their satchels that the brothers are not aware of. But in any case, ladies, Yosef holds Shimon hostage until they bring down Benjamin. They go back to Eretz Canaan, and with much pleading and persuasion against the will of Yaakov Avinu alav shalom, the brothers have to go back to Egypt in order to redeem Shimon. With their brother Benjamin, Yosef sees his brother Benjamin. He lets the brothers go, and this time he arranges for his special gavia, for his princely goblet, to be placed in Benjamin's satchel. As the brothers are riding out of Egypt, Yosef sends Egyptian troops to stop the brothers from proceeding forward and to search their sacks. Lo and behold, they find the royal goblet in Benjamin's satchel. Everybody is shocked, and they're all taken back to the palace to stand before the viceroy, their brother Yosef. The end of the parasha ends with Yosef telling his brothers the following. It says, "Chalila li me'asot zot." Far be it from me to do a thing like this and keep you all here as slaves. Ha'ish asher nimtza hagavia beyado. The man in whose possession the royal goblet is found in, hu yeh li aved, ve'atem alu leshalom el avichem. That man is going to be my slave, but as far as you are concerned, you go back in peace to your father. Ladies, when we read this parasha, we have to believe that everything Yosef did concerning this episode must have been with a particular intent. Tzaddikim don't do things in a haphazard manner. Everything they do is calculated and thought out. It's with a cheshbon. So we have to ask ourselves, what's with this entire charade over here that Yosef was involved in? Why did Yosef put the money in their satchels? I mean, Yosef must have known that the brothers would have been honest enough to return the money. So what's all this all about? If Yosef wants to create a trumped up charges against the brothers, there are so many different ways that he can make that happen. But the fact that he orchestrated this entire charade with the money, and then the second time he orchestrated a facade where he placed the gavia in Benjamin's sack, there must be a hidden meaning behind this episode. What was the secret of this gavia? It's hard to imagine that this royal goblet was some kind of simple prop that Yosef saw sitting on a shelf, and he said to himself, hey, you know what, let me take this gavia over here and put it into Benjamin's satchel. The Shevatim were tzaddikim. Everything they did was al pi sod. There were spiritual secrets hidden behind every action that they did. So episodes such as these cannot be learned on a superficial basis. That being said, what stands out in this parasha? If you look at Perek Mem Gimal, Pasuk Tet Vav, chapter 43, verse 15, you'll see that the Pasuk is referring to the Shevatim. Now, if we're writing about the tribes, we're either going to refer to them at this point as the Shevatim or Achei Yosef, Yosef's brothers. Interestingly, the Torah HaKadoshah does not refer to them in this way. It always refers to them in this parasha as Anashim. If you read through the Psukim, you're going to see that the term Anashim is used 10 different times. Why does the Torah refer to the brothers in this way? So we have to answer a few questions in the shiur. First of all, what's the secret of the Gavia? That's number one. Secondly, what's the secret behind Yosef putting money in the satchels of the Shevatim? And why the term Anashim? The good news, ladies, is that the answer to all these questions can be found in one commentary of Rabbeinu Bachya, alav shalom, that we're going to actually learn inside in order to get the feel of his Perush. This commentary, by the way, is considered a classic. And we're going to learn it inside. We're going to see the words that he chose. Ladies, this Perush of Rabbeinu Bachya's is my Hanukkah gift to you. Rabbeinu Bachya discusses Perek Mem Daled, Pasuk Yud Zayin. And he says on this Pasuk, Ukvar yadata ki ktonet hapasim hayat chilat hasibot vereshit gilgul hadevarim. You may already have figured out that the problems that occurred with Yosef all began with the ktonet hapasim, with this tunic that he got. V'nechshav lahem la'achzariyut gedola. And what the brothers did was considered a great act of cruelty. What did they do that was considered such a cruel act? B'ma shetiblu haktonet bedam haseir. The fact that they dipped Yosef's coat, Yosef's ktonet, in goat's blood. Ve'amru le'avihem, and then they went and they told Yaakov, their father, Zot matzanu. This is what we found. Now go figure out what happened to Yosef. Rabbeinu Bachya says that what the Shevatim did is considered a terrible crime. And for such a cruel act of this nature, there would have to be a grave punishment from Shamayim. So when the Jews went down to Egypt, they were physically tortured by the Egyptians as a punishment for what the Shevatim did to Yosef. In other words, the immediate slavery that occurred in Egypt, the subjugation to Paro, which took place right after the death of Yosef HaTzadik, that was a direct punishment for the role the Shevatim played with regards to Yosef and what they did to his Ktonet Pasim. Says Rabbeinu Bachya, Lefichach haya ha'onesh begufam. For this reason, the punishment was physical torture. They had to be beaten physically. And then he asks, well, when did the slavery begin? Achrei mot Yosef miyad. Immediately following the death of Yosef, the viceroy of Egypt, we see that the slavery begins. Rabbeinu Bachya is explaining why the Jews had to be punished through their bodies. Now, if you think about it, the Shevatim didn't do anything to Yosef's body when they dipped his Ktonet Pasim in blood. They didn't beat Yosef's body. They did sell him, but Yosef's body was intact. So Rabbeinu Bachya has a problem here, because if Hashem's system of retribution is midah keneged midah, and the brothers destroyed Yosef's ketonet, why is the punishment inflicted on the body? It should be inflicted on some article of clothing. And Rabbeinu Bachya answers with an amazing thought, ladies. Listen, you have to focus now. He writes, Ki haguf ketonet hanefesh. Oh, wow. These are major words, ladies. What is the ketonet? The ketonet is a covering that covers the body. It's an article of clothing that's covering the body. So Rabbeinu Bachya says, if you take a body without a ketonet, then the body itself becomes the ketonet. Because what is the body covering? It's covering the neshama. So he says, Ki haguf ketonet hanefesh. Therefore, when Am Yisrael was in Egypt, their bodies needed to be beaten in such a way that they'd bleed. And that was exactly like taking the ketonet and dipping it in blood. The only difference is that we're not referring to a ketonet made of fabric over here, but rather a ketonet made of flesh. This was the midah keneged midah. This ketonet was for the ketonet of Yosef. But then Rabbeinu Bachya says something else. He says, V'achar zman, after some time, meaning after the slavery in Egypt, it wasn't over, the punishment, believe it or not. The tikkun for the cruelty against Yosef isn't so simple, ladies. So after the slavery in Egypt, the punishment, according to Rabbeinu Bachya, was beharugei malchut. There was going to be a time in Jewish history where 10 martyrs, 10 big rabbanim would be murdered in the most brutal and heartless way. And this was carried out by the Romans. Chachamim explained that the bodies of these tzaddikim needed to undergo this torture. Their bodies needed to be blood-stained in order to be metaken, the chet of dipping Yosef's blood in the ketonet. And then Rabbeinu Bachya says these words, Ve'al ken timtza beparasha zu 10 pe'amim ha'anashim. Therefore, in this parasha, you're going to see the word anashim written 10 different times. Lirmoz al hasara harugei malchut. This is to hint at the 10 martyrs that died during the Roman era. Ladies, the word anashim isn't the most appropriate term to use for the brothers, and yet the Torah goes out of its way to use that word instead of the word shevatim or achim. Says Rabbeinu Bachya, Haya lo lomar achei Yosef or bnei Yosef. He says the psukim should have referred to them either as Yosef's brothers or the sons of Yaakov. But the word ha'anashim represents very specific people, in the sense that these Shevatim would one day have to come back to this world in a Gilgul. Their bodies would be reincarnated within 10 big rabbis during the times of the Mishnah. And then those 10 rabbis would be brutally murdered by the Romans, where their bodies would be tortured because their bodies represent the ketonet. And as a result, that would cause a tikkun for the Shevatim, for what they did to the ketonet pasim of Yosef. And then Rabbeinu Bachya proceeds to list the Asara Harugei Malchut, the 10 martyrs. Ve'elu hen, and they are Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel, Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha Cohen Gadol alav shalom, Rabbi Akiva ben Yosef, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, Rabbi Hanania ben Tradion, Rabbi Yeshevav HaSofer, Rabbi Elazar ben Dama, Rabbi Hanina ben Chachinai, Rabbi Chutzpit HaMeturgeman, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shamua. Ve'yesh lecha ladat, says Rabbeinu Bachya, and you should know something else. Shelo haya bizman echad. Don't think that all these Rabbanim were all executed around the same time. They all died during a span of many years. But the point is that there had to be 10 tzaddikim who came along to be mechaper for the great cruelty displayed by the brothers against Yosef and his ketonet. And then he goes on to say that Yosef knew all this. He knew through Ruach HaKodesh that the brothers were going to have to come back in various Gilgulim. Therefore, whatever ploys he concocted against the brothers, it was not out of vengeance, but rather Yosef was attempting to begin the process of the tikkun for this great sin that was done against him. Everything that he did was with one intent in mind, and that's to facilitate the Gilgul of the Asara Harugei Malchut. And once that would happen, he was hoping the sin would finally be corrected. There would finally be a tikkun, which means that what Yosef did over here in this parasha was actually an act of kindness. Now, the Ramban Alav Shalom writes that before something happens in the future, the tzaddikim do something that's called a po'al dimayon. We spoke about this quite a number of times in our shiurim in the past. A po'al dimayon is an action that you do here on earth that inspires the shamayim, and then the shamayim responds in like. For example, when Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom took the staff of Hashem in his hand and he held it over the Yam Suf and he stretched out his hands as if he's parting the sea, that was a po'al dimayon. What happened after that? The sea split. Give you another example. The Navi Yirmiyah Alav Shalom took a rock and he threw it into the water and the stone drowned into the water, it sank. That was a po'al dimayon that the Babylonian Empire should sink. And so it was. But why did Yirmiyah have to throw a rock into the water? Why couldn't he just pray that the Babylonian Empire should be destroyed? Because there is a concept called a po'al dimayon, where an action has to take place here on earth that awakens the assertiveness from Shamayim. So in our parasha here, Yosef HaTzadik needed to reincarnate the Shevatim into the bodies of the Asara Harugei Malchut, and for that he had to create a po'al dimayon. What did he do? Listen carefully, ladies. You two out there, listen very carefully, ladies out there. He took the money that the Shevatim gave him for food that they bought, and he put it back into their satchels. Now, use your imagination, ladies, because when you look at this episode with different lenses, you're going to realize something astounding. You know what you're seeing here, the money being put into the satchel? The satchel becomes the ketonet, and the money inside is what the ketonet is covering. I'll say that again. The satchel, the sack, becomes the ketonet, it's like the goof, and the money inside is what the ketonet is covering. So now each of the brothers is carrying a satchel with money inside it. And when they came back to return it, what were the brothers actually doing? They were removing the money from the satchel, which means that Yosef was helping them kind of separate the nefesh from the goof, the money, from the satchel. That, ladies, is a po'al dimayon taking place, as if to say that the nefesh of these tzaddikim, the shevatim, will be separated from the body and will return in another body later in history in order to complete this tikkun. Says Rabbeinu Bachya, ומה שאמר הכתוב, ושים כסף איש בפי אמתחתו, And when the Pasuk is telling us that Yosef asked his servants to fill each of the brothers' satchels with money, Yirmoz la'inyan, this is a hint to what we've been discussing all along. Ki hakatuv himshil et hanefesh lekesef. Because the Pasuk here is alluding to the fact that the money represents the nefesh, which is in the satchel, in the body. V'haguf le'amtachat, and the body is being represented here by the satchel, which we also know represents the ketonet. So when the brothers removed the money from the satchel, that was a poal dimayon that Yosef forced them to create, which was the secret of their future Gilgul. That means that their nefesh was going to be separated from the satchel, from the body, so to speak. And when they gave the money back to Yosef, that was another poal dimayon that their souls were going to have to return and complete their tikkun. As a matter of fact, ladies, when the Shevatim gave Yaakov the bad news that the viceroy of Egypt is demanding that they bring their youngest brother Benjamin down to Egypt, Yehuda takes responsibility for Benjamin, and he says the following. He says, well, why are we wasting time over here talking? We could have been to Egypt and back twice already. The Pasuk says, Ki ata shavnu ze pa'amayim. Now, literally, the Pasuk means, oh, we could have come back twice already with all this time that we're wasting. It says Rabbeinu Bachya, when the Shevatim said the words, Ki ata shavnu ze pa'amayim, that was a hint to something else the Shevatim were implying, which is what? We're going to have to come back twice. Twice in a Gilgul. In other words, after the sin of Yosef, they're going to have to return in Gilgulim twice more in order to rectify the sin. Ladies, this is a big secret that Rabbeinu Bachya reveals to us. He's telling us that all these incidents that Yosef orchestrated were not done to take vengeance on his brothers, but rather to prepare them for the next stage of rectification. But here's the thing. There is a problem with the Perush, with the commentary of Rabbeinu Bachya. It's actually a problem that might make his entire chidush, his entire interpretation, fall apart. And as much as we want to ignore it, we can't. What's the problem? Well, we know that there were 10 martyrs during the Roman era. But how many brothers were involved in the sin of Yosef? Most people think 10, because Yosef cannot be counted since he was the victim. And Benjamin can't be counted because he wasn't involved at all. Well, that leaves us with 10, so we're good, right? But many Chachamim discount Reuven also because he was busy trying to save Yosef. And that leaves us with 9 brothers that are guilty as charged. So for Rabbeinu Bachya to come along and say that the Asara Harogei Malchut died a gruesome death because of what the Shevatim did to Yosef is kind of a bit of a stretch, especially if we're only considering 9 guilty parties. So the math doesn't seem to work over here. So how do we reconcile this dilemma? Where are we going to get that 10th man from, the 10th martyr? How do we account for the 10th one? Well, ladies, the good news is that Rabbeinu Bachya himself addresses this dilemma, but in a different place in the Torah, in Perek Lamed Chet of Bereshit, over there, Rabbeinu Bachya says the following. He says, Ve'al derech HaKabbalah, according to the teachings of mysticism, of Kabbalah, we see that the story right before the brothers sold Yosef is a story about Yehuda and Tamar, and that whole episode that took place. Immediately following that episode of Yehuda and Tamar, we read about the selling of Yosef. Rabbeinu Bachya asks, well, what's the connection between these two episodes? And he introduces us to a wonderful chidush, ladies. He writes that when Yehuda married Tamar, he fulfilled the mitzvah of Yibum. What's the essence of this mitzvah? The essence is that the deceased husband wouldn't have the opportunity to return in a gilgul and fulfill his tikkun. But how can he come back? When a relative marries his widow, that baby that's born becomes the gilgul of the deceased. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai Alav Shalom explains that the sod of Yibum is the sod of Gilgul. The secret of this Yibum ceremony is the secret of a Gilgul. They go hand in hand. What's the proof? Later on in history, we meet Ruth HaMoaviyah Aleh Shalom, who was married to Machlon, the son of Naomi. Machlon died, and we all know the story. The Yibum that takes place for Ruth is with Boaz, who was a relative of Naomi, hence a relative of Machlon. That union between Ruth and Boaz resulted in the birth of a baby boy. When that baby was born, the neighbors all gathered around Naomi's house and they said, Yulad ben le Naomi. A son was born to Naomi. I think they had their facts wrong, ladies, because it was Ruth who had the baby and not Naomi. So why did they say that Naomi gave birth to a boy? You know why? Because since the baby that's born is the gilgul of the deceased, who in this case was Machlon, and Machlon was Naomi's son, so the neighbors, because they were all mekubalim, right? Right? When they said that a boy was born to Naomi, they were referring to the neshama of Machlon that came back in the body of this infant. Now this is all very fascinating, ladies. Very fascinating. So you know why the story of Yehuda and Tamar was written right before the episode of the brothers selling Yosef? Because both episodes have one common denominator. They both led to a gilgul. According to Rabbeinu Bachya, the selling of Yosef required the neshamot of the Shevatim coming back as a gilgul to do a tikkun. And in the case of Yehuda and Tamar, where a yibum takes place, the neshama of the deceased also has to make its way down again in order to have a tikkun and complete its mission here on earth. And then Rabbeinu Bachya continues to explain that the sin of the Shevatim couldn't have been cleansed or whitened through any other way other than through the gilgul of the Asara Harugei Malchut. In other words, when the Shevatim did what they did to Yosef and to his Ketonet, they were going to pay a very heavy price. And he says, Rabbeinu Bachya, Uklal hadevarim, and the general rule is, Asara acha Yosef, Yosef's 10 brothers, Elu Asara Harugei Malchut. They are actually the 10 martyrs who died later on in history during the era of the Romans. But ladies, we're once again stuck with that question of the 10 martyrs versus 9 guilty brothers. So in the next paragraph, Rabbeinu Bachya explains the following. He says, Uma shehaya asara harugei malchut ve'achim ba'alei ha'maaseh lo hayu ela tisha. He says, the fact that there were 10 martyrs although there were only 9 brothers in the selling of Yosef, that is a fact. We know this. It's a problem. ועוד יש לומר שנפקד על ראובן. But we could somehow include Reuven as the 10th brother here. Now, why is Reuven being included over here when he was the one trying to save Yosef? He was the one who convinced the brothers not to kill Yosef and to throw him in the pit so he can come back later and get him out of the pit and save him. And then when he finally comes back and he realizes that Yosef is not in the pit and that he was actually sold, his reaction is not one of joy and jubilation. So can we hold Reuven responsible? Can we accuse him of being guilty for trying to save Yosef? Says Rabbeinu Bachya, Velo bishvil chet Yosef. No, it's not that Reuven is included in this punishment because of the sin against Yosef. No. שהרי ראובן לא חטא במכירתו. Because in actuality, Reuven didn't sin concerning the selling of Yosef. אבל חטא בלהה נפקד עליו. However, because of the sin that he committed with Bilhah, he was counted along with the brothers. So, according to Rabbeinu Bachya, it seems that Reuven was caught on a different felony, which means that once the 9 brothers were charged for Yosef's crime, Reuven was also added to the list for some other crime that he committed. So according to Rabbeinu Bachya, the 10 Harogei Malchut were punished because 9 of the Shevatim were coming back for what they did to Yosef HaTzadik and his Ketonet. And that 10th brother had to suffer because of what happened with Bilhah. Now, ladies, I want to take a moment to discuss something else. As you know, the Ari HaKadosh Alav Shalom was a tremendous mekubal. He knew the gilgulim of every person from the time they first came down to this earth and until their last gilgul. Could you believe that? The Ari revealed to us something astounding. He says to us that the famous rabbi from the Gemara called Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, alav shalom, he was actually a gilgul of Reuven ben Yaakov. Oh, wow. And very interestingly, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus isn't listed as one of the 10 Harogei Malchut. Now, why does this pose a problem? You know why. Because we know that the Ari was an expert in seeing the gilgulim of every person he met and every person he learned about. So if we're going to accept the opinion of the Ari that Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus was the gilgul of Reuven, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus is not listed as one of the 10 martyrs, so how does that shtim with what Rabbeinu Bachya says, what he wrote? It doesn't go hand in hand with Rabbeinu Bachya's commentary. As a side note, by the way, when Reuven was born, what did his mother Leah say? Why did she name him Reuven? It says, the pasuk says, Ki ra'a Hashem be'oni. God has seen my pain. The Mekubalim explain that she said the words Ki ra'a. Well, what's the significance of these words? Well, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus was known in his time as Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol. So when Leah said the words Ki ra'a, the Rashi Tevot of the word Ra'a is Reish Aleph Hey, stands for the words Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol. Leah already saw that Reuven would come back as Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus. And why did they refer to him as Eliezer HaGadol? Rabbi Eliezer HaGadol? Not because he was tall, but because in his former Gilgul, he was the Gadol. He was the oldest son of Leah and the eldest of the Shevatim. Not only that, but what Rabbi Eliezer's rabbi, who was Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai alav shalom, when he was complimenting all his Talmidim, what did he say about his Talmid, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus? He looked at Rabbi Eliezer and he said, you remind me of a bor, a pit. Bor sod she'eno me'abed tipa. You're like a cemented cistern, like a pit that doesn't lose a drop. What a strange thing to say. There's nothing else he saw in Rabbi Eliezer other than comparing him to a pit, to a bor. Ladies, of course that's what Rabbi Yochanan saw. Because what did Reuven do? He's the one who suggested that the brothers throw Yosef into the bor, into the pit. And then he went back to that pit in order to rescue Yosef. You think that's a coincidence? Yosef was the tipa, that drop, the seed that came out of Yaakov, she'eno me'abed tipa, which means that Reuven didn't want that seed to be gone. He didn't want one of the Shevatim to be lost. Incredible insights, ladies, incredible. So if that's the case, we need an alternate interpretation here. As we said, Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, according to the Ri HaKadosh, was the Gilgul of Reuven ben Yaakov. We also said that Reuven can't be counted as one of the 10 martyrs. So who's the 10th guilty party in this story that needs a tikkun? You're not going to believe it, ladies. Listen to what Rabbeinu Bachya says. He says, Lefi shegam Yosef chat'a. Oh, shocking. Rabbeinu Bachya is telling us that Yosef is also guilty of this sin. What do you mean he's guilty? Yosef is the victim over here. Why is Rabbeinu Bachya even saying that? Ladies, there are two types of victims. There's the kind of victim who doesn't provoke, but he's innocently victimized. And then there's the kind of victim who provokes, and he suffers as a result of the provocation that he created. So the question here is, who started the balagan? Well, Chachamim tell us that Yosef was indeed guilty because he provoked the entire story. How did he provoke it? Rabbeinu Bachya explains that while he was in the presence of his older brothers when he was younger, Yosef actually placed himself above his brothers when he should have been more humble and he should have given them more honor, more kavod, since they were older than him. They are your older brothers. Listen to Rabbeinu Bachya's words. Ve'haya mach'is otam. Rabbeinu Bachya says that he would anger them. U'mitpa'el kenegdam b'chalomotav. And he constantly shared his dreams of grandeur with them, which they did not appreciate. V'chevan shaya bichlal hachet, haya bichlal ha'onesh. Wow. He says, because Yosef was involved in the sin in some way, he was also involved in being punished as well. Well, this resolves the issue of that missing 10th person. Ladies, there's a Gemara that says, Kol mi she'eno chayav bedavar eino motzi yedei chovat acherim. Anybody who's not obligated in a particular mitzvah cannot fulfill someone else's obligation through them. What does this mean? It means that if I am not obligated to blow the shofar on Rosh Hashanah, for example, I cannot go ahead and blow the shofar for you in order to be motziyu al yedei chovah, because I myself was not obligated in this mitzvah. That makes sense. That's the simple interpretation of the Gemara. But the Baal Shem Tov alav shalom has a different view on this Gemara. He says that the word chayav doesn't just mean obligated, it also means guilty. Says the Baal Shem Tov, anyone who isn't guilty of a particular crime, of a particular sin, he cannot help others who committed that sin. To really help someone when they commit a particular avera, you have to have some kind of affiliation to that avera as well. You have to have, you have to have it yourself. Because that's the only way that you could possibly understand what the person is going through and why he committed that avera in the first place. And interestingly, Chachamim tell us that when Moshe Rabbeinu saw the Jewish people worshiping the Egel, he became so angry that he just threw the luchot. What does the Gemara tell us about a person who gets angry? We're told a person who gets angry is like an oved avodah zara. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, oh, okay, good. Now me and Am Yisrael have something in common. We're both like ovdei avodah zara. And now I can plead on their behalf and save them from the wrath of the Ribono shel Olam. Kol mi she'eino chayav b'davar eino motzi yedei chovat acherim. So Moshe Rabbeinu had to be chayav b'davar. He had to be guilty of the same crime in order to be motzi, in order to help Am Yisrael get out of this disaster that they created through the worshipping of this avodah zarah. Why did I tell you all of this? Because now I want you to understand Yosef's entire charade over here. He's trying to save his brothers, trying to orchestrate the proper tikkun for them. But how can he save them from the sin if he was only the victim and had nothing to do with the crime? Well, in comes Rabbeinu Bachya, who informs us that he most certainly is involved in the sin together with the brothers. He instigated the problem. So he's the perfect person to help bring about the tikkun. Now, ladies, I'm very curious to know something. Now, we know that the Reuven came back in a Gilgul as Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkonos. But I want to know, which one of the 10 martyrs did Yosef come back as? And the Chida alav shalom gives us the answer. The Chida explains that in Kabbalah, when we use the term ben, the son of, like Moshe ben Rivka, for example, we can assume that this refers to a biological connection. But in Kabbalah, the term ben is referring to a person's previous Gilgul. Sometimes the word ben is coming to tell us where this person really originated from. So the Chida explains that Rabbi Akiva alav shalom had in him a few sparks of holiness that belong to various tzaddikim, various neshamot. He writes, Hu haya metipat Yosef hatzaddik. Rabbi Akiva had in him a spark of Yosef hatzadik's neshama. Velachen nikra Akiva ben Yosef. For this reason, his name was Akiva ben Yosef. According to the Chida, the term here, Akiva ben Yosef, is not just implying a biological affiliation, that Akiva was the son of Yosef, but rather it's also telling us that the Rabbi Akiva's neshama is a Gilgul of Yosef. So now we know that Yosef HaTzadik came back in a Gilgul as Rabbi Akiva, who died as one of the Asara Harogei Malchut. And that probably explains why Yosef was so busy with the Gavia in this parasha, the royal goblet. There's a lot going on with that Gavia. So ladies, in order to learn the next segment of this lesson, you really need to open your minds. Now, let's imagine that the Gavia is Rabbi Akiva. Now, you don't have to imagine that, but for us, for now, the Gavia is Rabbi Akiva. Now, we're going to read the pasuk at the end of this week's parasha. What does it say? Yosef says, Ha'ish asher nimtza hagavia beyado hu yihye li aved. Simply translated, it means, the man who's caught with the gavia in his possession, he's going to become my servant. But it can also mean something else when we enter the world of Sod. Because Yosef was trying to say the following. The one with the gavia, who yihye li, that one, he's going to be for me. He's going to work on my behalf. He's going to help correct things for me. Now, ladies, some of you might be thinking, wow, one second here, isn't this stretching it a little bit? I mean, really, we're turning the Gavia into Rabbi Akiva. Ladies, the Mekubalim revealed to us that if we take the word Gavia, Gimal Bet Yud Ayin, it stands for the words Gilgul Akiva ben Yosef. That's the secret of this royal goblet. Gilgul Akiva ben Yosef. Yosef was telling the brothers, Ha'ish asher nimtza hagavia beyado, the one who's going to have the gavia, who's going to be the Gilgul, hu yihye li. That's actually, you should know, that's actually me reincarnated. Avid. That person, namely Akiva, he's going to do the tikkun for me. He's going to do me a great service. Ladies, I don't know if you realize what amazing chidushim we're learning. But if that's the case, what you just learned, we can understand something else. When Yaakov came down to Egypt to see Yosef, it was after 22 years of not having seen him, thinking he's not around anymore. When that historic meeting took place, Yosef fell on his father's shoulders. But we don't see that Yaakov falls on his son's shoulders. It's an awkward moment after 22 years of not seeing each other. You'd think that both father and son would fall on each other's shoulders. But that's not what happens. So Rashi HaKadosh, Alav Shalom, jumps on this. He comments, probably what happened was that Yaakov was reciting the Kriyat Shema, which is why Yosef was the only one reacting to that momentous reunion. It was probably the time of Kriyat Shema. We have to wonder, I mean, if it was the time of reciting the Kriyat Shema, and Yosef is called a tzaddik, well, why wasn't Yosef also reciting the Kriyat Shema? Ladies, many years later, Rabbi Akiva came along to rectify the previous Gilgul of Yosef, and it's no coincidence that one of the things that would need correcting is that one missed Kriyat Shema that Yosef did not recite when he met his father for the first time after 22 years. Because what is the last thing that Rabbi Akiva does right before his neshama is taken away from him during those last moments of life? He yells out the words, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. Rabbi Akiva made the tikkun for Yosef HaTzadik in more ways than one, ladies. Since we know that Yosef was taking upon himself the preparation for his next Gilgul, we can understand another pasuk in this week's parasha. When Yosef sees the brothers again after he had already revealed himself, the pasuk says, Vayenashek lekol echav, he kissed all the brothers, Vayefk alehem, he cried on them. Well, that's a strange way of saying it. He cried on them. What, did you just fall on top of them? Does it mean he cried for them? Alehem, Vayefk alehem. If he did cry for them, what was the matter with the brothers? Was somebody sick? Was he maybe just crying from happiness? Ladies, from our vantage point, when we read this story at this point, it seems like the story is over. They forgave each other, they kiss each other, they hug each other. But Yosef knew it wasn't over yet. He saw the heavy price that he and his brothers were going to have to pay in the future. Chachamim explain that Vayefk Alehem means the following. The word Alehem, the way it's written in that pasuk, is without a yud. It's spelled Ayin Lamed Hey Mem. And that word is Rasha Tevot for the words Atidin Lihiyot Harugei Malchut. All the brothers were now destined to come back and be the Asara Harugei Malchut. And Yosef cried for this reason, for the impending reality. Ladies, Rabbeinu Bachya concludes, and we're going to conclude with this as well. He says, Umipnei zeh, because of everything that we learned today, Nichtema ha-parasha, our parasha ends with the following words. Yosef tells the brothers, Ve'atem alu leshalom el avichem, and you, my brothers, go up to your father in peace. Rabbeinu Bachya says that Yosef, he could have said something else. He could have said, Lechu leshalom ledarkechem, go about your journey in peace. But he didn't say that. Although Yosef is speaking to his brothers in the present tense, however, says Rabbeinu Bachya, Veromezet la'asara harugei malchut. But these words that end our parasha are hinting to the 10 martyrs in the future. What is Yosef really telling his brothers with these powerful words? He's saying to them, fear not, because there's going to come a time in the future when you're going to rectify together with me what took place between us, and you'll be able to go up in peace, El Avichem, to your father in Shamayim, in the heavens. And the Gemara tells us that when the 10 martyrs died, they reached such high levels in Shamayim that nobody can enter that place where they reside in the heavens. This is how our parasha ends, ladies. Yosef helps to facilitate the tikkun for himself and his brothers. What he did in our parasha wasn't an act of vengeance, but rather an act of compassion with tremendous kavanot. And as a bonus, ladies, because it's Hanukkah tonight, I want to give you a spiritual donut as a treat and add one more idea. The Baal Megaleh Amukot, Alav Shalom, says that in life, what seems bad to the human eye may likely be the greatest good afforded to us by the Master of the universe, the Ribono Shel Olam. When we read the story of the Asara Harugei Malchut, we see it as one of the greatest tragedies in Jewish history. Now, I don't want to get into the details of how each of these great rabbis perished, but it's enough to say that each died in the most gruesome and sadistic of ways. To us, reading this, such a death isn't befitting the greatness of these tzaddikim. But when we look at the story through the eyes of the holy Arizal, we see that this episode of the 10 martyrs had the ability to rectify a very grave sin that haunted Am Yisrael for generations. So if you look at it through the X-ray vision of the Ari HaKadosh, we could assume that these great martyrs, the tzaddikim, accepted the tikkun upon themselves because they saw their bodies merely as a ketonet. When they suffered the deaths that they did, it was as if you had here 10 tunics, 10 ketonets that were now dipped in blood. Each of the brothers had to rectify the sin. They had to rectify the role that they played with Yosef's Ketonet Pasim. And Yosef had to correct the role he played and that he taunted the brothers concerning his Ketonet Pasim. So when the Romans were beating up Akiva, which resulted in blood coming out of his body, unfortunately, that was like the Ketonet Pasim of Yosef that was being dipped in blood. And the same is true for each of these tzaddikim who died in the way that they did. So the Baal Megaleh Amokot explains that there are 13 midot of Rachamim, 13 attributes of mercy. Kel, Rachom, Chanun, Erech, Chapayim, Verav Chesed, Ve'emet, and so on and so forth. And those 13 attributes of mercy, they manifest themselves over the course of Chanukah. The Ari HaKadosh reveals to us that on each of the nights of Chanukah, another midah is made accessible to us. Ner Rishon of Chanukah is Kel. The second night is Rachum. Then there's the Chanun, then Erech, and then Apayim, and so on. Now, if there are 13 midot and only 8 days of Chanukah, what happens with those extra 5 midot of Rachamim? And the Ari explains that on the 8th and final night of Chanukah, the last 5 attributes, Notzeh, Chesed, Alafim, Noseh, Avon, V'Pesha, V'Chata'a, V'Nakeh, those attributes are all coming down to the world. They're being accessible to us. And that's why Zot Chanukah, the 8th day, is such a holy day. Because on each of the previous nights, only one midah of Rachamim is accessible, but on the last day of Chanukah, 5 midot are attainable, and they can yield so much beracha. Ladies, when the brothers stood before Yosef after the tragedy of this story and the regret, Yosef had to reveal to them in various different ways and through hidden codes that there's going to be a time in the future where they're going to have to come back and rectify the sin. But he was also telling them that what is going to seem like a cruel and undeserving end will be the ultimate salvation. Nothing in life is what it seems, ladies. Nothing. We have to have faith that everything that happens in life is for a reason. There are tikkunim that are taking place that we're unaware of. There's mesirut nefesh that we're displaying in one way or another that's creating a special place for us in Shamayim that's reserved only for those who accept their lot with love and with great sacrifice. Ladies, look at it this way. We don't know whose neshama we carry and what tikkunim for that neshama is. But we have to believe that embedded in each of us are holy sparks of great people whose essence we are helping to elevate and even redeem them through our nisyonot. And especially when we overcome those nisyonot with love and mesirut nefesh. I want to wish you all a Chag Sameach, Sameach, Sameach. A Chag filled with light, with miracles, with clarity, and may we witness the ultimate light of redemption, Bekarov Mamash, Amen Ken, Yehi Ratzon.